Well, Canadians are known for their diplomacy, but now we're locked in an interesting fight with Russia and Denmark to prove a vast portion of the North Pole belongs to Canada. Thank you very much. The federal government has submitted more than 1,200 pages of scientific evidence to prove their point in the hopes of flying the maple leaf at the top of the world. Let's show you a map here of what's going on in that region. Arctic claims, check it out, the North Pole. Look at all the countries vying, though, for sovereignty. Russia, Canada, Norway, Greenland, through Denmark as well, the United States. Michael Byers is an international relations professor at the University of British Columbia. One of his areas of expertise is Arctic sovereignty. Michael, wonderful to have you on CTV today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
What do you make of this really fascinating battle that's going on at the top of the world?
Well, the point to make is that it's a exercise in science concerning the seabed of a large and very deep ocean. This is not about ships going into battle or dogfights over the Arctic Ocean. This is a scientific process that is set out in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and the Arctic countries have all been following it, including Canada. So this submission is Canada actually accepting the rules, putting forward its best case based on science. And now a commission at the United Nations will review that science and determine just how far Canada's rights go.
Michael, how would you say our claim sort of stacks up, or this evidence is being presented?
Well, I'm not an oceanographer, I'm not a geologist, but I do speak to these people, and they tell me that Canada and Greenland, which is owned by Denmark, and Russia probably have overlapping rights in the center of the Arctic Ocean. In other words, the extended continental shelves of those three countries probably overlap in the region of the North Pole. And this is possible because once upon a time, North America and Eurasia were the same continent. So essentially, we have the same continental shelf, even though it's now on opposite sides of a large ocean.
In terms of the value of this, what are we talking about here, Michael?
Well, we're probably not talking about much value at all. The North Pole is roughly an 8-hour flight in a jet north of Toronto. It's in the middle of a large, deep ocean covered by shifting sea ice in total darkness for 2 or 3 months each year. In other words, it's the last place in the world where it could be economical to drill for oil or to mine for minerals. This is actually about tying up one of the last remaining loose ends in international maritime boundaries. And the remarkable thing about this story is that Russia is following the rules just as well as Canada and Denmark. And this is therefore a good news story. We have some pretty serious problems in our relationship with Russia. But in the central Arctic Ocean, everything seems to be fine.
Yeah, let's show the map again, if we can, just to our viewers as you and I are speaking, Michael, to give them a sense of the area in question here. Let me ask you about the Russians and sort of how they have behaved as you see it.
Well, Russia has been very diligent in collecting science, and in 2016, it filed a submission of its science at the United Nations. When it did that, it indicated that it was willing at some future point to negotiate any overlaps in the scientific results of that process. And that's actually what will likely happen in 10 or 20 years. Canada and Russia and Denmark will have to sit down and draw lines in the ocean because their scientific claims will likely be validated and there will be overlaps. But all three countries are quite willing to do that. Again, there's no real economic interest here. We're talking about the seabed only. We're not talking about the water column or the surface. We're not talking about fish. We're talking about possibly deep sea minerals. And so it's a very collegial process, and everyone seems to be behaving themselves. And the other final news here is that China has accepted the validity of this process, therefore essentially accepting that it has no rights to this area.
Michael Byers joining us from Salt Spring Island in British Columbia. He's with the University of British Columbia, international relations expert. Good to have you on, Michael, as always. Thank you.
Thank you.